morning, evening, lunchtime, everybody, wherever you are. I've got Stephan Mansour here today with me, who is a digitization expert in the construction world. Today, we're going to go through a topic titled Change Management. And I want to be asking questions from him how he addresses this topic in large organizations in the construction world. But if I zoom back a little bit, why am I having these calls? It all really boils down to value networks. And what does it mean? It means that, long gone are those days where companies would create companies in a silo, work on something for 5 years and then magically come out and show the results. But, it's really the world we are living in. It's really the collaboration creates far, far more value for these kind of concepts and new companies that we could ever imagine doing by ourselves. So it's really about working together, collaborating, and then getting the best out of that for everybody. And that's kind of how I boiled on a value network, a business model of the future. So I want to give a quick drum roll for Stephan and give him 1 minute to introduce himself. Who are you? Why are you having such a fantastic mind here with the call with me today? And give a little introduction of yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Annie, for having me today. Basically, just to give a background, I started off my career after graduating college in IT. I focused on consulting and working for big pharmaceutical and telco companies in the New York area. After doing that, I was doing development and doing project management work, and then left the New York area in 2005 and headed off to Greece. In Greece, I was working for one of the largest Middle Eastern construction companies in the MENA region and North Africa. We had that has done major construction company projects in Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and so. One of the biggest projects that they've done was the Dubai Mall, and also has done the midfield terminal in Abu Dhabi, which is now actually just finished. So basically, I've been working for that company for 15 years before actually moving to Canada now in the beginning of the 2020 to start off a new career here. And basically what I'm focusing on is construction digitization and construction 4.0. For the past 10 years in the construction company I worked with, it's a 70-year-old private company. So they were trying to look into new innovative technologies and how to advance their processes and how to better the solutions in the market, and in order to stay competitive and to be ahead of the game when it comes to a very competitive market, especially in the Gulf region and the Arab world. So it kind of transcended into that, and now in Canada I'm trying to just stay the course and continue that path, so to speak.
Got it. So basically, if I wind back in the beginning of your intro, that big aquarium in the Dubai Mall, if the glass breaks, then you're the guy that I can point the finger at.
Yes, we are liable for that. Don't worry.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I understand. Great. Well, I wanted to, go straight to the point. I want to talk about change management. So, a lot of big companies, they say they want to do something new, but then most can't, or they can't change, or they're not structuring their companies in the right way in order for them to do that. And of course, you have also. There's a difference between going at it as a consultant or trying and doing it with internal people. So I would like to understand from your perspective, okay, how are you going to go to a 70-year-old company and go, hey guys, we're gonna go digitize this and put 3D printing here and there, and whoopsie-daisy, it's gonna be beautiful. How are you gonna do that?
Basically, with the approach that I had with the company that I worked for, it was not easy at first. I mean, there was a lot of pushback at the beginning. You had to convince management that actually 3D printing was a technology that was viable. They had only had this vision of 3D printing as something that you put on your desktop and you play around with it and you come up with a plastic model and that's pretty much it. But they never actually envisaged the 3D printing to be something that could be done on a grand scale, and also actually giving the company a competitive advantage in the market. So there was a lot of learning that has to go on internally. You have to know who to talk to and how to approach them. If you are, especially with a very private company with people, seasoned people in the construction sector, you have to actually make it make sense, so to speak. You have to they have to see the benefits of it, the logic behind it, and little by little they bought into it, and that what opened the doors into actually reaching out to startups and technology providers to actually find the best solution, because the first solution that you have and the first implementation that you have has to be a success. You have to do your homework, you have to do your due diligence, you have to find the best startup and technology provider to actually make the first iteration of such a technology into a construction firm a successful one, that they can be convinced that, okay, now we can move forward and implement such a technology moving forward and advance it.
Got it. So it's kind of a little bit of a risky play. You have to hit the bullseye with the first project. If you don't, they're like, you know what? Let's pull the funding. Let's do something else.
Exactly, and especially when there's no funding and people don't take you. I mean, people are focused on especially in the construction sector, people are focused on their traditional manners of doing business. They have their tender processes, they have their RFQs, they have their proposals, and they have their estimations, and they're looking at the millions and billions of dollars worth of projects. And so when it comes to 3D printing, especially the pilot project that we did in 3D printing in Saudi Arabia, the project was not economically feasible in terms of making a lot of money and so on. It was a small project, but the magnitude of the project in itself was much bigger than any of the bigger projects that they had, because the ramifications of the success of such a project is unamountable in terms of value.
Yeah. So in terms of change management, so how can you then convince let's say the stakeholders, because obviously you have these kind of like, you're on these two prong approach. You got to be able to, they can understand comparing apples to apples, but of course your story might be, you know what, now you're trying to compare apples to oranges, and they will have different kinds of benefits. So how do you play that game in a big organization?
You try to actually speak the same language to both sides. From the startup side, you have to see what their needs are, what their concerns are, and how they want to approach a project. And then we actually do the same thing from the construction side. So I was talking to the construction company from one side, trying to address the terms and logics that they have in mind. Their concerns primarily is the guarantees and the warranties moving forward. When a construction company is pretty much the entity that is liable when a structure is built, they have to provide the warranty certificates, they have to be liable, and so on. So they have to be sort of in the comfort zone when it comes to actually, when we print a house, is it something that we can guarantee that they actually stand for 10 years and without having faulty equipment? So we take the design that comes from the consulting firm or from the startup or the technology provider. We run it through our engineering process. Our engineering department in-house at the time had gone through their checks and balances to make sure that the design is okay. And they actually modify the design so as to pass the minimum requirements for actually being certified. And once that happens, then they start doing their quantities and procurement processes in order to actually get the what is needed and what is required. So, and that was what was the nice blend between the two, is that they worked together to actually come up with a perfect design. The 70-year-old construction company had their experience, so they weighed in on the startup to added value, tell them how to fix it and how to better do their designs and where things will work and where things need improvement. So everybody at the end was happy. So it wasn't, I cannot say it was an easy process. It was a very difficult process because both sides never liked people telling them what to do and how to do it. So everybody had their designs, and we know better and type of things. And there were many times when conference calls never went so great, but we were able to manage them and run.
I'm in that all the time. Like, we've been doing this for 100 years. It works. Why change it? Exactly. Like, that's exactly the point when somebody's going to smack you right in the face on the left field. We know you don't even see what happened. So when you get too comfortable, then things start happening. So, but what were let's say, of course, you would take your big learning that you did in creating the first livable 3D printed home in Saudi Arabia. You're taking that learning then into a new company. So what is your key takeaway of those learnings that you had in the project in Saudi Arabia, and then taking that into the new project?
Well, the biggest thing is how to better approach a construction company and better approach a startup. I mean, from the startup sector, you always have to ask the right questions. There's certain questions you have to ask in order to actually see if the startup that you're talking to has a viable product. Is it something that is worth pursuing? Is it something that you can take forward? And will they be able to stand up to the pressure and the requirements of a project? So there's certain homework and due diligence has to be done from the startup and from that sector. From the construction side, you always have to get your, for example, in the Saudi, is like you have to not just get the upper management support, but you have to get the people that you're working with from a day-to-day process. Yeah, in our case, it was we had an estimation department based in Athens. We had an engineering department based in Abu Dhabi. We had the area management and area offices in Saudi Arabia. So all those people and all those entities had to actually be on the same page and work as a group and as a team in order to make that a success. They all had to have that mindset that, yes, we're going to try this. We are going to put this into our process, and that's what made it a success.
Yeah, got it. It's always so funny because when you see, let's say I see a 3D printed house in the media, hey, it came out in 24 hours and boom, 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 it's done, Mm-hmm. So, also for everybody who's listening, so you kind of fully understand that there's a lot more happening in the background from, politics, stakeholders, government, municipality, startups, material suppliers, God knows what, so something might look like it's very simple, but, it kind of took 5 to 10 years of preparation, even to get started, So, mm-hmm. So good to hear. In your mind, again, doing these projects in the construction world, where do you see the biggest benefit of 3D printing in the construction industry?
There's many aspects and many benefits, and I don't think people realize what were the magnitude of the benefit of 3D printing. I mean, if you just look at it from the construction sector, I mean, just from spare parts. I mean, if something goes wrong or the building needs repair, you can actually do that within a 3D printed section. You can always either 3D print a wall to fix it or to add any value to it. To resolve that, but also from the digital side. I mean, the design is always there. What you have is a digital library. If you actually want to go back and print any part of a spare part or anything like that, the engineering is there. You don't have to re-engineer anything like that because the digital file is always there. All you have to do is take that file and print the part and send it over. It's a kind of a mix of modular and 3D printing, but at the same time, everything is there. You're reducing waste, you're reducing material acquisition, but again, there's the challenges. For 3D printing to be a success, you have to use, for example, local materials, and regulation is a big thing as well. But the benefits, I cannot stress them enough when it comes to 3D printing in construction, because there's so much that could be done and so much that could be done for the environment and actually help in meeting all the new regulations and requirements that are being imposed now in the construction sector.
Yeah. Funny that you mentioned the word spare parts. I mean, of course, it's kind of like if you think about buildings, you don't really think about spare parts. But it's funny because I actually kind of brings me back one of those ideas that I had. Like, I read this article in the paper last year that there were 50,000 bridges in America which were identified as kind of semi-destroyed that need immediate fixing. I'm like, well, exactly. Why couldn't we just send a guy with a 3D scanner, go scan all the bridges, spend several months at just going every single location, scan all the bridges, you have all the digital data, so you kind of pre-make all the parts that are required, instead of one construction company then going from one bridge to another. So you could kind of separate that project into multiple layers. Just a thought that came to my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
One area which I wanted to ask you about, which is relates to affordable housing. That's something that we have some initiatives going on, and it's also a interest point for me as well, because every time I see big problems happening for humanity, it always kind of triggers me like, okay, how can we help? How can we create solutions? And especially looking at how to create solutions for problems that seems like are getting worse and worse and worse. So if you look at affordable housing, the data is astronomical. I mean, it's spiraling out of control. So I see in the media a lot about some talks about 3D printing used as a solution for affordable housing. What are your thoughts?
There's a few things that have to be addressed when you're talking about 3D printing and affordable housing. If I'm going to bring in a printer from abroad and I'm going to bring expertise from abroad for example, a very war-torn country and to say that I have affordable housing, that's not going to work. I mean, you're imposing so many financial burdens on the bringing the material from abroad, the expertise from abroad, the equipment from abroad. So it kind of defeats the purpose of affordable housing. Maybe, yes, it was printed in 5 days or a week, but if you consider the magnitude of the undertaking, it's not going to work. So there's certain key things that you have to take into consideration when you talk about 3D printing and affordable housing. It's finding local material, and that's a big thing. Because there are a lot of areas, the different materials that can be used for 3D printing. It's not necessarily just regular concrete or high performance concrete. There's certain other materials that could be used, and locally there could be many resources that people have to explore. The other thing is making sure that it makes sense locally. If you're hiring, for example, the challenges that we've had in the Middle East or North Africa has been that people would ask me this question: why should I 3D print when I can hire 100 people to actually do the work cheaper? Because labor is cheap in the Middle East and North Africa.
Good question.
But the thing is that I say, okay, well, there's an added value to this. You're talking about being a better product. You're talking about providing a sustainable product. You're talking about using local resources and manpower that adds value. So, I mean, the benefits of it are far exceed the sort of like the stumbling blocks that stand in front of 3D printing. But again, 3D printing has to make sense. It has to be sourced out locally. The engineering has to be sourced out locally, and the longevity of the 3D printing project will depend on local resources actually supplying and sustaining this. So if I'm going to be dependent on material and expertise and hardware from abroad, that's not gonna help me at all.
Yeah, glad to hear that, because I completely agree. I mean, I see a lot of these different beautiful solutions, beautiful systems out there, but kind of give you an example. I'm the housing minister of country X, and I need 1 million homes. I would like to use your system. How can we get it here? Oh, well, we have to ship it. Oh, well, it's not going to work, is it? Things far more complex. So what I hear from that is local manpower, local materials, local systems, and just try to kind of improve that, and hopefully somehow marry that with the digital future, if I understand right.
Definitely. But also there's another thing that's actually stopping in the way of 3D printing in general and affordable housing as in particular, but it is the regulation. I mean, like when you build a structure, what many people are doing now is that they're actually forfeiting the 3D printing structure with traditional ways of actually doing rebar supports and regular concrete, which kind of works against the 3D printing structure itself. I mean, the 3D printing is supposed to minimize carbon footprint, is supposed to reduce waste, but if you're canceling that out by including rebar and including concrete in your pillars and everything like that, that kind of like defeats the purpose of actually 3D printing the structure.
Yeah.
There should be regulations and standards like ASTM standards and international standards of how you can certify a structure in 3D printed, so that a structure that is 3D printed is actually 100% and truly 3D printed, not jimmy-rigged or finding a solution to patch it up so that it can pass local negotiation.
Or made into a media story.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think that the full development and the full fruition of 3D printing in construction will actually blossom and explode once these regulations are in place, because people then will know how to follow which regulations, what standards they have to meet, and what certificates they have to achieve. So then their solutions will be able to come to market easier. At this point, it's just certain entities that can actually do it. So you have government entities in certain countries that are actually printing one site or one building or another, but you don't see it being done mass produced.
Got it. And in terms of time, how long will such a process take?
I'm thinking hopefully that TÜV Sud in the Netherlands has actually started doing this. They have something, a Dubai meeting coming up in April, where they're going to discuss the regulations for 3D printing structures and standards. So hopefully that will be a start, and hopefully by the end of this year of 2020 that we can actually see some headway gained in this. So it will be very nice to see that these regulations are picking up, because once these regulations are in place and people have sort of like a framework to work towards, then that will actually speed things up, and you can see much larger implementation of 3D printing. Now everybody's kind of lost because they don't know what standards they have to follow, and how can they get their structure certified, and if I print a structure, then what happens to it? I mean, like, nobody can live with it because I don't have the seismic requirements, I don't have the load bearing requirements, or I don't have the structural requirements and certificates to be issued, because nobody's going to certify my structure, and that's the biggest
thing. Got it. But it's like in any new technology, basically, it's kind of like the police and the robbers. Like, you gotta first go kind of make headway and break rules a little bit, and then somebody comes after you and go like, oh, we kind of have to now regulate it and put a law on it, because the interest is too big to stop. Basically. Yep. But hey, great having you over. I wanted to just finalize it with the last, well, not even a comment, but a question to you. What did I fail to ask, and what were you expecting that I would ask, or what kind of final feedback would you have that would kind of put a mark on this talk of today? Words of wisdom. How about words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. Always know what questions to ask. Always be aware of what's true and what's not true. Yeah. Especially when it comes to new technologies and the way things are developed today. So you just have to basically ask the right questions.
Got it. Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll see each other on the social media, and we'll be posting this, and we hopefully get a lot of feedback. And now a drum roll. All right. Ciao.
Thank you.